to The Truth in His Heart. I am your host, Rob Lee. And today, I'm excited to be in conversation with my next guest, a composer, improviser, administrator, educator, showrunner, and most importantly, a human. They are the executive director and co-founder of Mind on Fire, a musical arts cooperative collaboratively presenting contemporary music in Baltimore and beyond. Please welcome James David Young. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you so much. That was very powerful, putting your fist up there and saying, like, Rob Lee, welcome to the podcast. Yeah, it's nice to be there. Thanks for having me. There being here. Okay, we're doing this. It's happening.
Thank you for making the time. Thank you for coming on. And, the name, Mind on Fire, all of this stuff has been like just floating around in conversation. So before we get into sort of the main topic of today, I want to at least, open it up and give you the space to, introduce yourself to the audience for those who are undipped. And if you could, share an early experience that you found to be formative to the work that you're doing today.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I'm a strange little socially anxious ghost, so it doesn't surprise me that maybe no one knows who I am. But yeah, my name is James. I came to Baltimore, I think 13 years ago to attend the Peabody Conservatory, where I got my doctorate there now, I guess a decade ago. But after graduating from there, I stuck around getting like odd education and administration and music, like whatever you can do with a classical music degree jobs. And I've really enjoyed myself kind of exploring all the various experimental music scenes of Baltimore, which are, I don't know, it's the garden of Baltimore, like music making is just incredibly like vibrant and diverse and amazing in a way that that is exceptionally rare, like especially in North America. So I'm caught, as I've been told, in the Baltimore vortex, and I kind of enjoy being caught in the Baltimore vortex. But no, I'm originally from Texas, so being up here in the North, this is my consideration of the North, is just like really exciting. I doubt I'll leave it.
Thank you. Texas, huh? I don't know. Initially, it maybe it's the same as sort of our mutual acquaintance Ian. That I was like, "You're European, right?" Immediately, the first yeah, you're from like Denmark or something, right?
No. Like, I mean, I do have half of my family is from Denmark. A bunch of Danish people found each other in Texas and then got married to each other, and eventually, hello, I appear on the scene. But no, I grew up in Waco, Texas, which has no history or anything interesting to happen in that small town of Waco. And I will take no questions about it, or as many questions as you want to ask. I was 6. When stuff went down there. But no, I have been kind of fearfully going from educational program to other educational program until like, well, I guess I should see what it's like in reality. And I found a very bizarre way to experience reality here in Baltimore, which I quite enjoy. Speaking of Baltimore, you asked me for like an early experience, right? That's kind of like influenced my work as a kind of music administrator. And there's one thing that came to mind immediately, and it was at the H&H, rest in peace. But like the H&H, for those unawares, earlier than your time, was a really fantastic, like multi-level live workspace of kind of like multiple like warehouse spaces and music studios and living studios of like amazing musicians. And a decade ago or so, a friend told me about like the H&H. It was like, I guess 2013. So I'm like third year into my like strange doctorate. And I go to this like place downtown. It's the middle of the night. I hit a button on the door that I think is like the H&H building, and I get buzzed up, and I've talked to no one. I jump into like a graffiti-ridden elevator, and like I guess it's this floor, and then I get off the elevator onto the 5th floor, and into just an incredibly beautiful, vibrant like living room with like a huge kitchen, and then also off to the side is a whole like complex of chairs set up like looking at a screen. And I am alone. I don't know what's going on. I'm like, well, I'd sit in a chair, and I'm there just in time for the like man off to the side to start his projections, and he's doing these like electric analog projections on the screen of like, it's kind of like an electric Rothko of like big blocks of color kind of like dissolving in and out of each other with like electric little lines coursing through. And he's also playing the sound of the electricity that is going into the device. So it's like beautiful droning electric sound that's also changing. And I'm just sitting here transfixed in, it feels like I've kind of like walked into like a different universe, a kind of like temple of like new art making and performance. Like my main experience as a classical musician was like, you go to a concert hall, you sit in an uncomfortable chair, and then people get on stage and they make sounds at you, and then you applaud them, and then you leave. Yeah. And this was just like, it was so, it felt, it's almost ridiculous to say, but it felt so risky in this moment because I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea. It's like, what am I supposed to be doing? How am I supposed to be doing things? I don't know. It's like, who am I supposed to be talking to? What is like, how long is this going to go? In fact, like I remember the experience of it. I think it was just like maybe even only 20 minutes long. Like the entirety of the entire show was 20 minutes, but I was sitting there and I'm like, I wonder, and I was like feeling kind of like an itchiness come over me. It's just like, I wonder if this is about to end. Like, is this going to go forever? What's about to happen? And then it was done. And then it was just like suddenly done. I'm like, oh, that's the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. So I've been kind of like chasing, that's kind of like nourished my addiction of like going to as many like esoteric and other types of like performative shows like throughout Baltimore, but it's also kind of nourished an addiction of like putting on those types of shows myself in town. It's like, it's something that I am constantly chasing and sometimes achieve and sometimes don't, but like the excitement of like landing on getting a bunch of people to agree to come to a space where they don't know what's going to happen and then reveal to them something very exciting or inspiring is something that I live for.
Thank you. Wow. When you set the stage initially, it reminded me of sort of the backdrop setting before you mentioned what was off to the side. It kind of gave me like David Lynch vibes, Panos Cosmato vibes. It's like, hold on, what's going to happen? Are you here for your own like execution? What are you describing? And then, oh, yes.
Right. No, it's easy to think that sometimes. It's just like until you open yourself up to the universe, it's just like until like the warmth of like other suns like inhabits your body, it does feel like, oh God, oh God, oh God, what am I doing? Oh God.
Yeah. So I want to step back a little bit. We're definitely going to talk about Mind on Fire in a moment, because like that, I think that's kind of where we're headed toward. But at least want to like talk about sort of that early moment or that early period when you realized that you had an awareness or an interest, rather, you were aware of your interest in music and how that journey has like been moving from, having sort of this interest and having sort of like the playing it and being involved in it and being in the educational side, being in the performance space side of it, music administrator side of it now, and as well as still a musician. So talk about that journey a bit.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in a fairly musical household. Not that my parents played instruments; they aspired to play instruments. But my dad was always embarrassed to sing in church, and my mom played piano on the side. But it was really like my dad collected records, and he like built an audio system and like played records like every night, and I would like listen to whatever early 20th century classical music he was playing. And that's what I got into like as a kid and also as a teen. Like, well, everyone was like listening to like top 40 on the radio. I was listening to like Prokofiev and Mahler and Shostakovich, like some weirdo. But there is always some aspect to that music that, again, as an only child as well, it kind of like sparked my imagination of just kind of giving me like a vision of like a paradise or like a different planet, like a different way of kind of experiencing reality and experiencing time through kind of the adventure or the journey of like storytelling through like esoteric abstract music and abstract art. And it's just like I've had the good fortune of experiencing that both like in recorded music and live music since then. And then to sell myself out immediately, I loved going to musicals. My parents had a subscription to the Dallas summer musicals, so we would go there with like the mom's side of my family. They like all live in Dallas for some reason. We would visit with a family, and then we'd go out to the musicals. And this is where I saw like Phantom of the Opera and the musical Big, or Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, or one of my favorites, Starlight Express. You know, cats except trains. I just like it's so absolutely exhilarating to like watch people like on stage act with all of their body at you, and then try to convince you that their weird little problem is incredibly important, and then to start singing. There's something just so incredible that will mutate your brain if you see that at an early enough age. You're like, yeah, this is life. This is like ultra life happening right in front of me. So that, and being a good little like indoor kid, I also got myself into playing like tons of video games. So it was like strangely enough, it was video game soundtracks, not movie soundtracks, that got me into kind of like the idea of composition. I know a lot of people like watch movies and are like, oh, I want to do that. It was like having like playing a game and having the music kind of react to what you're doing. You know, it's like playing Mario Brothers, and then like everything's going great, the loop is hitting, and then you die, and there's like a sudden transition of the music that is still like very engaging and exciting, and then you move on to like the dungeon, and like the music changes again, and just like it's like heightening and kind of like mellowing whatever the tension is, like any point. You know, like Legend of Zelda, Final Fantasy, all these like great like video game soundtracks, just I would like listen to for like hours and hours as I played through these things. And then eventually in that field, I came to a game called, what was it? It was Mario Paint, where it's just like you could through like the Super Nintendo like paint little pictures, which was like the main aspect of it. But it also had a really terrible but like super fun composition program embedded in the video game. It was like you could do like 40 bars of like 4/4 3/4 time, and like input little sound effects and like a diatonic key. And I would do that for just days and days, like saving little tiny compositions made up of like little car horn beeps or dog barks or like whatever was going on. It was the most fun thing in the world, and I just that never left me.
It's giving me a little bit of the Gene from Bob's Burgers there when he has the keyboard.
Yeah, absolutely. No, for sure. It's like also it's like it certainly engaged my desire for perfectionism. It was just like music was the thing that I could be good at and could excel at and be impressive at. So it's just like, ooh, keep this close. That can be my whole identity, can be music. Like, thankfully, I found other ways of being, but that was the start. That was kind of like the engine of making things happen.
In that sort of brief period where everyone was playing with like Fruity Loops in high school because everyone wanted to be a rapper and everyone who was smart wanted to be a producer, I was like, man, I just want to be a producer so I can wear chains and just be vague and just be weird about things. I was just like, yeah, right? Come on over. Yeah, that's $10,000. You know, I wanted to be that guy. And I'm going to have a weird request for you in rapid fire now. You told me about video games, so we got a weird request coming.
Okay, good. I look forward.
So if you will, could you describe like your creative approach now, your process of making music now?
Yeah, absolutely. So now, much with my like other kind of administrative and like presentational practice, my compositional practice of like music making is based a lot on trust and friendship and getting to like know other people. Like a lot of my music is it's like even the slow music is fast. Like a lot of my music is fast. It's like my brain is constantly kind of like working through like whatever idea. It's like there's a lot of looping. There's a lot of kind of like obsessive um like motives occurring. There's a lot of like playing around with like the colors of music occurring, and it's often like extremely difficult, like difficult to the point of like impossibility, like physical impossibility. So it's like an important part of the process for me is finding a performer who's willing to go on that journey with me. And truly, it's like my favorite thing to do is to write music for someone else and be able to like through like working with another person, try to create an artwork that is better than what either of us could do alone. Like I could write notes down, but it is in like the interpretation of those notes and the finding the like hard limitations of that notation that is where the art occurs. Like for instance, if I'm asking my friend Ty to play his saxophone as soft as possible up as high as he can possibly play, then those notes are going to begin cracking and kind of like dissolving. Like, you know, you think of like a lot of like early John Coltrane playing like up in the stratosphere and those notes kind of disintegrating and cracking. But that sound is so euphoric and amazing and alive. That is the kind of the sound that I'm like hoping for and going for. And it's like finding people like Ty, who I've mentioned, or like my like art partner, like Allison, who's a singer, just finding people who are willing to say like, this might sound bad, but maybe I don't know. Let's just try it out. Let's flip around and see what can like work out like in this moment, and like finding those moments that could like potentially break apart and then don't is like incredibly like exciting. Like music to me, like in writing music, as again, like as I've said earlier in this very interview, it's like there's like a nice shroud of social anxiety that kind of like lives on my body at all times. Like music is the way that I'm able to like communicate and be vulnerable, and like all of the music that I write is, while kind of in an absurd lateral way, like deeply personal to like what's happening like inside. It's kind of the way that I get like my ideas out there into the world. It's kind of a way that I like reveal my own little slice of like paradise, or kind of like kind of communal communication with other people. And when I'm able to find either like when I'm able to like be like with myself, present with myself in that journey of creation, and then present with another performer who's interpreting that music, or then present with a listener who is accepting that music and listening and paying attention. That's like, there's such an incredible, rewarding level of connection that it's gold. You know, there's this Polish composer who is now dead from like being too old, but his name was Witold Ludwowski, and he referred to like the aspect of finding the like that member of the audience who listens to your music and it's just like, oh, I understand, I get it. He called that act soul fishing. You know, it's like passing your line of like very gnarly music into the world and having someone like grab it and say like, I understand, I get this, I see you. And it's just like, I love that. That's what I love. So I was like, let's go as hard as possible and let's see who's like the little freak in the audience who's like, yeah, I see, I know what's going on there.
I see what you're doing.
That's what I live for. Yeah, exactly.
That's fantastic. And I, look at what I'm doing here as a version of that, where not everybody's going to get it. Not everybody wants to be a part of it. It's very much a collaborative attempt, of we're in the middle of it. We have not met before this. We've exchanged a few emails.
Yeah.
The way that I look at it is we may have seen each other in public because Baltimore's small, but it's one of those things of like, we get what we get. And, that's kind of what it is. And really, conversation could go left and it could be dumb. It could be bad. It could be whatever. And some might say most of them are bad, but I think I definitely relate on, if I was asked to do this, let's say in person, And if it'll be a different vibe, it'll be a different energy. It's going to be a little more nerves where I can have this sort of shield of protection here.
Sure.
But also having a person come on, talk about their work, be vulnerable and sharing this experience. And there's a degree of vulnerability. And I've been looking more and more like at this as a collaborative art project, an ongoing collaborative art project. And storytelling happens to be the medium.
Absolutely.
So without belaboring the point any further, let's talk about Mind on Fire. Tell us about it.
Sure. So like Mind on Fire was something that I started with like a number of like classical focused musicians back in like 2017. Originally, it was kind of a harbor for a bunch of like classical music organizations to like kind of like get together and like pool resources and etc. But that became too complicated. So what it became was a kind of like presenting organization for like mainly classical music, mainly like new classical music, kind of like trying to tap into a type of music that I was not hearing in Baltimore that I felt very like passionate about. And then quickly evolved from there. Like originally it was just going to be a vector of like hearing different types of music. And then all of a sudden on our first show, we had a puppet troupe and like a poet, like also on that show with us playing like a bunch of like different classical music pieces. And that unlocked something for me of just like the type of show that I want to produce is the show that is like bringing a bunch of forming a bunch of connections between like various like art forms from like similarly minded artists. And a lot of the time I found myself, this is not necessarily the best news for grant writing, but it is exciting to me of just like having trouble explaining exactly what like Mind on Fire is as a concept without kind of describing what it is that the organization like does. Like right now there's a certain mode of like classical music making that like we all think of in our heads when like the words classical and music are placed together in like a phrase. And we think of like the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra. We think of going to like a multi-million dollar concert hall and like dressing up as nice as we can and sitting in, again, uncomfortable seats and sitting in front of like an incredibly tall stage and watching like a bunch of like top tier wild musicians getting paid like enormous amounts of money to play the works of like dead white Europeans. And there is an excitement to that, surely, of just like the pomp of that is exciting, but it's also often like very dead. There's a level to it that is like not the life that I experience of just like everything I told you about, like living and connecting and being in concert with like other human beings around me that just does not currently exist in like the hegemony of like current classical music making, where I want there to be an outlet for music that is alive. It's just like Mind on Fire only plays classical music by living composers, or I should say 95% of this. Like I don't want to be too absolute about it. 95% of the music we play is by living composers. And like since the beginning, we've always like put on shows with like other performers and performing artists and like the Baltimore, DC community. Because I don't know, it's fun. It's fun not only to bring like these art forms together, but bring the audiences of these art forms together. Like Mind on Fire, it's a community project. It's a community art project that is trying to suppose a like different mode of presenting this type of music, of presenting these art forms, of presenting experimental esoteric art differently. Like, you know, paying musicians, like having someone like making sure people are taken care of, like making sure that like somebody knows where everyone's supposed to go. You know, it's just like making like putting the structure and the systems in place to kind of like fight for a different type of communal universe when it comes to music making. That is funded by like grants and donations, and not as much of just like audience buy-in or necessarily patronage.
Yeah.
And that's where the beauty of it is. That's where I love the organization, why I continue to like do work in it, is that I believe that there's the potential is there to kind of in some way, as much as I possibly can be within a nonprofit system under capitalism, try to be a like more anti-capitalist sort of organization, like an organization that can like that can exist as not a like move fast break things, but to use the phrase once again as like a garden with seasons, with times of rest and with times of great vibrant growth, and allow like everyone to kind of like have a say within that like growing. And it's slow going, but it's like necessarily slow to like maintain a level of like health and stability, which is like, year by year, minus the past couple, has been kind of like a step towards like further and further stability, which I've appreciated.
Thank you. Wow, that's great. And I have definitely some follow-up questions on that. And but yeah, I love hearing it. And yes, the example that you were providing earlier of uncomfortable seat, all of these musicians, I can really speak on that because I've been going to listen to more classical music recently, and I was like, can these chairs be a little better? Like I'm 6'4", right? So right there.
Oh no, you're doomed. You're doomed the moment you step into a halt. Like, what if you could just stand up? What if you could sit down and then you could just like, I'm uncomfortable, I'm going to stand up and stand to the side? Wouldn't that just be, it's so easy to do. Why isn't that not a thing that people can do?
I just want to get in the aisle and Kaepernick it a little bit, just take the knee and just look at like, hey, this is great.
Yes, yes.
But I'll say like there has been some attention, and it's funny because I've spoken to more like people that are in this more fine art oriented side of music, on the classical side, conductors, composers, things of the sort. And it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, I kind of understand this. And for the longest time, it felt sort of rarefied, like, oh, this isn't for me. And I was like, no, this is like the only live music I've gone to in the last like year has been like, this sort of music. So definitely it's a different vibe, and kind of picking up on norms. And also I watch Tar. So there's another thing. And
there you go.
I was like, oh, that's what that is. And my partner was like, don't act like you know anything. I was like, I know it all.
I mean, not to go down the tar hole, but watching that movie felt like, oh my God, how do they know? How do they know this? How did they find out? All of this is true. It's wild. So chills.
It felt like
one of the greatest cinematic endings, maybe, of all movies. Everyone see Tar, everybody.
It felt like it's been rare movies in the last few years where I'm like, oh, I know these people. And it's like, no, you heard about that scandal about Lydia Tarr, right? That's what it felt like.
Yes. Yeah. No,
that's kind of how I felt a little bit about the, I think, previous year with the movie Drive My Car or what have you. I was like, yeah, I know all of these people in this play, man. It's good, man. They'll get it right. And I've been watching this movie for 4 hours. I was like, these are the people. But it's just literally like a testament to it. And I think with that sort of comparison, that it's something that I've always had an interest in, whether it be sort of classical music or even like theater, right? Because that's what ultimately Drive My Car is about. One of the big parts of it, and just feeling like, oh, this isn't for me, but being able to have it presented in sort of a different way, maybe through having these conversations and speaking to people who are like really funny, it's like, oh, this is what you do. And then being able to have some humor around that, it makes it less rarefied, and it kind of pulls in like, now I'm more interested in it. And then seek out media that's representative of it to have sort of those in jokes about it.
Right. Yeah. It's an art form that requires an enormous number of people to like make happen. Like, in order to play a symphony, you need like at minimum 15, but like usually need around 60 people. Not that I'm like bringing in like companies of 60 people, but I still need to know like a ton. I need to know people. I need to like get out there and like, witness some art being made, then tell a person like, I really like what you do. Will you do it on a show that I put together? And they'll say like, yeah, sure, I guess. You seem nice enough. But it's like forming those bonds is like the art, and then like the exemplification of that art is then in like the Mind on Fire like concert. And to get people to come to a show, why not have the show like in like an alternative space such as like 2640 or Lamondo or Current Space or the Compound, like any of these like artist run like spaces that are like really working very hard to kind of like provide new support systems for like all sorts of like little weirdos in training all around the city. It's and making a welcoming space is like such a big part of like all of this. It's like if someone's going to come to a show, I want them to feel like I want them to know how excited I am that they're there. I want them to know how happy that I am. It's like I always make a point of like saying at least a few words before a show, like just like welcoming everyone and telling them a little bit about what they're going to hear, instead of just having like the art exist. It's just like there's so much that can be gained from just like saying a sentence before like whatever it is the presentation is, or just like why are we saying this right now? Why is this here? Why is this connected to this other thing? And then it's like, what I have found is that folks will go along with it. Folks, like when you're just like, hey, could you please listen to this? And they'll say like, yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll give it a shot. I'll give it a shot for 30 minutes, which is about as long as like most things are anyways. Like you can do anything for 30 minutes, right?
Yeah, well, that's a lot of things.
Sure. So, within reason, we can be reasonable.
So, again, relatively short time, you touched on like, 2017, and you have sort of those blank years, the COVID stuff or what have you, where it's been, things have been different, right?
Yeah.
And, but during this sort of time, this existence, you guys have collaborated with a diverse range of artists, from somatic artists, poets, puppeteers, actors, filmmakers, and a large array of musicians. Like, what is your sort of like take on collaboration and creative exchange? Like, why is it important? And what is it like collaborating with so many different types of artists? And I say that way because I have my own side of it as well.
Right. Yeah, it's like it's like ultimately in service of like the creation of like new ways of thinking. It's just like art making, and like a big reason why like so many of us make art is to engender like empathic pathways to kind of get folks like to like not necessarily convince anyone of anything, but just to like, get someone to like try to understand, like try to gain understanding through like performance practice, through kind of like abstract making. And the more different types of like artistic expression that you kind of like run across, is like the greater number of tools you have, and this like empathy chest that you're just like slowly building. So it's like working with and it's very exciting. Like every artist has their different way of like prepping, of kind of like getting into the zone and like presenting themselves and existing within a space that is like completely different than like what I'm used to. Just like there's like one performance artist that we worked with. I had everything prepped for them to like present their work. Just like, do you want to do a rehearsal or anything? And they're just kind of like leaning back a chair, like, no, I'm good. There's like super casual, like just I remember them like eating an orange and just being like really cool and just like, what's okay, cool. It's like, and just like in my, it's like, no, you have to do a run through. We have to figure out if everything works. And then of course it's like they get onto stage and their character changes and become like a completely different creature and then like engage with every single audience member, like one by one. Or I've worked with like other artists who we've like set up kind of like a wicker throne for, and they've sat in it kind of like meditated for a while and then like delivered their artwork. And then there's other artists who have been like very shy and standoffish, and other artists who are like very engaged and excited to know what is happening all around them at all points in time. And like finding ways to like allow all of these people, or give these people the space to like activate their art form and kind of engage with like all these different artists, and then and then like assist these artists in engaging with like the audiences that we've brought to whatever show that we're putting on is, I don't know, it's really exciting. I feel like every time a show happens, there's like a level of like, I have no idea what's going to occur. It's like I have an idea of what's going to occur. Like I know what the art is, but I don't know exactly what the art is, and I don't know if it's going to work. But like so far it's worked. So far it seemingly continues to kind of like work out, and it's only kind of like strengthened my general like love of like all of these different folks and all the different ways that like we kind of express ourselves as like human beings. Like it just kind of like continues to like open up my mind to like all of the myriad ways that we like communicate with each other. So it's just like it has just become easier and easier and easier for me to listen. And it's so rewarding, at least to me, and very exciting. And I'm really enjoying it.
It's wonderful. Thank you. So this is almost a appetizer for the rapid fire portion. This last question. In let's say 2 to 3 words, what does successful collaboration and cultural exchange, creative exchange, look like?
It looks like setting a space where listening can occur.
Cheated there, but all right, I'll take it.
I'm verbose. I'm verbose.
You answered it like an artist, which I appreciate. It's like, hey, here's the parameters. Now I'm going to do something different. It's like sky the blue. Nah, it's probably.
I try to do my worst when I can.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So that's kind of the real podcast, the real interview. And thank you for indulging. Now, for all of the goodwill we've established, all the yucks we've had, as it were, now we're going to get to some rapid fire questions. Don't overthink them. And I told you that one ridiculous one. I'm going to save that one for last because I think it's funny.
Sure thing.
So here's the first one. What is your favorite meal?
A hamburger. Man, a good hamburger. Oh, my God.
It's a very Texas thing you just said.
That's true.
Beef. Yeah. I hear you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
What is your go-to pastime?
Taking a walk through the woods, walk through Wyman Park. I'm pretty close to Wyman Park these days. Go down there.
Nice little stroll.
Yeah, a little stroll.
Creative juices flowing.
Yeah.
What's the last book you read?
Ooh, what is the last? I read Carmen Maria Machado's memoir about a terrible relationship that she went through. Oh, so good. Called The Dream House.
The Dream House, got it. So you briefly mentioned that connection between music and color. Could you tell me what your favorite color is, and is that color associated with a musical genre?
I wish I could answer the second one with a yes, but my favorite color is pink. Like beautiful, hot, vibrant, blinding pink.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. A little good and plenty pink. I dig it. Yeah.
Right. Maybe the genre is just a trumpet blaring in your face at all times.
Mine's is gray. I don't know what that says about me musically, but it's definitely gray. So this is the last one I got for you, and this comes as a request. So, Super Mario Brothers, right?
Sure.
You referenced it earlier.
One of the greatest.
There is a very stress-inducing sound that happens in that game. Can you hum a few bars of that for us?
Stress-inducing sound?
And I think you know what I'm talking about. It's maybe a certain level of the game.
Oh, a certain level of the game. What are you talking about? Are you talking about like when everything when maybe when you're about to run out of time, da 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 da, when you fall into a hole, da da da.
Yes. I was immediately thinking of
Da, 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 ba-da-da, you're dead forever.
oh shit. That's great. I mean, I listen to a fair amount of sort of that 8-bit. Maybe it's for, I think it's for Street Fighter though. Like if you want to get me jazzed up, put on like the theme for like Ken or Ryu, or even like
Oh,
just go off King, just
I know. For me, if I want to have a really incredibly silly mood, it's the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 soundtrack.
Oh yeah.
That like you want to take me for a ride? It's like I do. I would like to take you for a ride.
So that's pretty much it for the pod. And I want to thank you for coming on, spending a little time with me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I want to open it up again. Shameless plug portion. Let the fine folks know where to check you out, where to check out Mind on Fire, all of that good stuff. The floor is yours.
Absolutely. You can find us at www.mindonfire.org, and that will lead you to most of the things that we do. You can find us on Instagram at MOF Baltimore. You can find us at Facebook I'll use Facebook a little less. Oh yeah, at Mind on Fire Music. And that should lead you to most of the things that we do. Give us a follow on Instagram though. That's where I normally talk.
And there you have it, folks. I want to again thank James David Young from Mind on Fire for coming on to the podcast and chatting with me, spending a little time. And I'm Rob Lee, saying that there's art and culture in and around your neck of the woods. You've just got to look for it.